late. Michelle Obama surprised fans on our new podcast by saying her pet peeve about her husband is that he's chronically late. For example, we're still waiting on him to admit he's from Kenya. And as for Barack's pet peeve about Michelle, he's mad that she keeps leaving the toilet seat up. When she cleans it. When she cleans it. Goodness. Rumors continue to escalate for the Obamas. Hopefully they can settle it like men.
Michelle Obama's polished image just met its match, and Greg Gutfeld is swinging with savage precision. In a roast packed with wit, irony, and relentless truth bombs, Gutfeld peels back the media gloss layers of America's favorite first lady turned lifestyle icon. From curated virtue to brand-building brilliance, nothing escapes his comedic scalpel. This isn't just a takedown. It's a hilarious reality check that turns reverence into roast.
Michelle Obama's new podcast is off to a slow start, ranked at number 34 on Spotify. In her defense, most people don't like her.
Half of them are probably primetime producers. But still, Michelle's spilling the family secrets, like how Barry gets on her nerves. Listen.
Barack, he had to adjust to what on time was for me.
Because he was on that island time.
Well, but, I've got this husband who's like, when it's time to leave, it's 3 o'clock, he's getting up and going to the bathroom. And I was like, dude, like 3 o'clock departure means you've done all that, It's like, don't start looking for your glasses.
If you thought Michelle was untouchable, wait until Gutfeld lights up the stage. Greg Gutfeld walked onto the set with that signature glint in his eye. The one that tells you something devastatingly funny is about to happen. And tonight, the comedic storm had one target in its path, Michelle Obama. You could feel it coming like a low rumble before the thunderclap. It wasn't going to be polite. It wasn't going to be filthy. It was going to be vintage Gutfeld. A roast served flaming hot, delivered with a smirk and a crowbar.
Have to use our voices to make these choices clear to the men that we love. Our lives are worth more than their anger and disappointment.
What's that pitter-patter sound I'm hearing in the background? It's the footsteps of Barack running to vote for Trump.
He started by setting the stage as only Greg can. Michelle Obama, the media's untouchable icon, praised with reverence usually reserved for royalty, had built a reputation so airbrushed even her flaws had PR agents. Gutfeld marveled at how the former First Lady managed to float through the political universe, like a unicorn made of hope, kale, and podcast sponsorships. But tonight, Greg wasn't buying a fairy tale. He came armed with comedic napalm, and no amount of inspirational book could shield it.
Even if they run Michelle. According to a new poll, Michelle Obama isn't as strong a Democratic candidate against former President Donald Trump as many Dems would have you believe. In a hypothetical matchup, my favorite kind. Trump wins with 47% of the vote compared to Michelle Obama's 44%. I guess some of the kids whose school lunches she ruined are finally old enough to...
He dove straight into the branding. Michelle, once introduced to America as a relatable mom from the South Side, had somehow transformed into a multi-million-dollar juggernaut of curated relatability. Gutfeld pointed out how she went from vegetable garden advocate to global lifestyle brand without anyone blinking. She had sneaker lines, speaking fees the size of defense budgets, and Netflix deals fatter than the federal deficit. Yet somehow she was still treated like an outsider fighting the establishment. Greg found that hilarious. She wasn't outside the system. She was franchising it.
No, I don't think she can. I think you said this before, Tyra. She can't run because if she were to lose to Trump, it would be the most humiliating, loss in history.
Well, not just, I don't know if I think I said that and you added that, but we'll take
You also said that I look great.
Listen, Republicans, she just kicked our ass. She's up 15 points. I noticed this weekend. I'm just going to speak on it. We can't play with a lead. Every time Republicans, we get a lead, we do something.
Then came the myth-making. Gutfeld took a flamethrower to the media's endless adoration of her every move. He joked that Michelle could walk into a room, trip over a chair, and headlines would call a powerful metaphor for resilience. She could blink, and the press would write sonnets about the strength in her eyelashes. To Gutfeld, this wasn't admiration, it was worship. and not the fun kind. The media had turned Michelle Obama into a brand, then elevated that brand into sainthood. And what's a rose for if not to rip the halo clean off?
American men suck.
Let me warn you, your rage does not exist in a vacuum. If we don't get this election right, your wife, your daughter, your mother, we as women will become collateral damage to your...
He peeled back the manufactured image, pointing out how every appearance, every soundbite, every facial expression seemed engineered to perfection. There were no casual moments. Everything was a moment. Greg compared it to watching a TED Talk directed by Disney. It looked polished, sounded empowering, but somehow always left the audience clapping before they realized nothing was actually said. He laughed about how Michelle had mastered the art of making platitudes feel profound. Say something obvious in a slow, serious tone and boom, headline gold. But Gutfeld didn't just roast a persona. He went after the ideology wrapped in it. He tore into the constant narrative of victimhood, wrapped in couture. Somehow Michelle, wealthy, influential, connected to the highest echelons of power, was still sold to the public as someone struggling against invisible forces. Greg found the whole act exhausting. He joked that the only oppression Michelle Obama faces is the weight of her production team carrying all the lighting equipment for her speaking gig.
A gay man. Nothing wrong with that, by the way. Tyrus. The men who are the real danger aren't the criminals or the illegal aliens. It's the guys that don't vote the way you want them to.
The ignorance that she projected as if the men are the only ones angry in the house. So every man who's been in a house where inflation's high, the electric bill's doubled.
And there was the infamous moralizing. Greg Gutfeld unloaded on it like a man who had been waiting years. Michelle's lectures about health, nutrition, and how to live better always came packaged with an undertone of scolding, like America was a classroom, and she was a substitute teacher who actually brought detention slips. Greg couldn't stop laughing about how even simple advice sounded like it came with a side of guilt. And of course, no roast would be complete without touching on the legacy building. Greg shredded the endless parade of documentaries, autobiographies, and carefully produced moments that seemed less about inspiration and more about historical preservation. For Michelle, he compared it to someone installing statues of themselves before even leaving the building. Every quote was framed. Every memory was immortalized. Any criticism, even the lightest one, was deflected with cries of sexism, racism, or a vague accusation that the country just couldn't handle a strong woman. Greg rolled his eyes so hard, he almost gave himself whiplash.
Heather, were you surprised that Michelle Obama is not polling better? Because I assumed she would just explode.
No, I mean, well, I would expect her to do better than Biden. I mean, especially she's of a younger age, I think greater mental capacity. And the way the border is going, I don't think you can get much worse. However, it is surprising that even among independents and as well as Democrats overall, not any.
She could attack, insinuate, campaign, and then disappear behind a curtain of moral superiority whenever challenged. It wasn't just frustrating, it was brilliant. And Greg gave her credit for mastering the game while pretending she wasn't even playing. Greg joked that if Michelle wore jeans, it was a strike against tyranny. If she wore heels, it was a message to the global economy. He imagined fashion magazines convening summits to decipher her blouses, like they were decoding the Dead Sea Scrolls. Greg wasn't impressed. He thought the obsession said more about the culture than the clothes. And of course, he couldn't resist going after the carefully curated family image. Not the people themselves, but the way they were used. Gutfeld pointed out how everything Michelle touched became a branding opportunity. A dinner became a movement. A photo op became a national moment. He joked that if she took a walk, CNN would call a masterclass in leadership. If she waved, someone would write a thesis. The woman could sneeze and generate 3 book deals and charity campaign.
It's not one-sided. It's just the men are the ones trying the solution, and their solution is to vote for President Trump. And here's the thing. Their women are backing them up. So take that little message, curl it up in a little box, and give it to Mr. Garrison.
What made the roast sting and soar was how Greg wrapped it all in undeniable wit. He wasn't attacking Michelle Obama, the person. He was dismantling Michelle Obama, the brand, the myth, the endlessly promoted avatar of modern virtue. He reminded viewers that when everything you do is choreographed to perfection, it becomes impossible to tell what's real. Because at the end of the day, Michelle Obama's greatest accomplishment wasn't just surviving the political world. It was mastering the post-political one. She turned herself into a movement, a product, a living ideal, and Greg Gutfeld, with a sparkle in his eye and a monologue still in progress, was just getting started. Gutfeld leaned in deeper, shifting gears like a man who knew he was nowhere near finished. The roast had only just touched the surface. Now it was time to get into the layers, the places where brand and reality blurred so seamlessly. Even Michelle might have forgotten where one ended and the other began. 10. I married one. Don't you like that? He brought up the endless accolades, not because they were undeserved, but because of how predictably they rolled out like a red carpet of reverence. The media had built a shrine, and they treated any critique like sacrilege. But Gutfeld wasn't there to worship. He was there to poke holes in the stained glass. He laughed at how everything around Michelle had to be described with phrases like historic or unprecedented, even when it was just her announcing a new line of throw pillows or an Instagram live with a celebrity guest. Greg imagined her walking into a kitchen and a documentary crew, immediately turning it into a metaphor for global healing.
But you can tell when she campaigns for Kamala, she looks like a bridesmaid giving a toast on her friend's 5th wedding.
Right.
Like, she knows this is a bad idea, and no one gives a The only thing she's missing is a Cosmo and the hiccups. Like,
It wasn't that she didn't do impressive things. It was that even the ordinary was inflated into the extraordinary, like an air mattress pump so full of hovered above reality. And then came the activism. Gutfeld couldn't help but point out how Michelle, while endlessly praised for championing causes, never really risked anything. She never had to walk a tightrope. She built a marble runway and called it resistance. But what really got Gutfeld going was how every time Michelle re-entered the public sphere, the entire media world acted like she returned from exile, as if the break between podcast episodes was some kind of national silence. He compared it to a concert where the artists never leave the stage, but keeps doing encores until the crowd forgets what the original song was. And that, he said, was a trick. Keep the spotlight on long enough, and people forget there's a script behind the shine. But Greg hadn't forgotten.